underneath the create command up here, we've got them down here, and it's the spline and the conic curve. Now under the spline, we've got two, a fit point spline and a control point spline. So I'm going to have a look at a use for the fit point spline, in particular as I might use it for some model making. So we click on that one, and very easily what the fit point does is we make a point, we move to another point, and it starts to make a curve, and away we go. And so you can get the curve, and you can follow it round to what you want and then finish it, and that's the curve. So I thought, right, what can this be usefully used for that I might want in my design work? And the one that come to my mind immediately was using this to produce corrugated pieces, as it were, like a corrugated tin roof on a line side hut or something of that nature. So I'll run through how I did that, and again, I'm not working to scale or dimensions, etc. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a square down, and what I want this to represent is the height of the profile and the pitch of the profile, if you like. So I'm going to give it a 5mm height and let's say a 10mm pitch. Okay. Now what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to go over here, and if you remember, we've got various options on the right hand side. I'm going to turn the constraints off just for clarity really, so we can see what's going on. Now what I've decided, I want to change that into construction line, so highlight it and hit the construction. I'm then going to, for clarity again, delete these center construction lines. So I end up with a construction box that's 5 by 10. Now what I'm going to do is copy that. I'm going to use the create on the rectangle pattern. And I want to create the pattern. Now I want to go, it doesn't matter whether I'm going in whatever direction, because what I'm going to come up here is a design to print a sheet of corrugated material. It's not being fitted to a building. So what I'm going to set it at over here is the spacing, and the spacing is going to be 10mm, because that was the pitch that I set. And I'm going to put in 6 to make a start. So we've actually got 6 in there and finish. Now this is all work we've done before. And now going in with the spline and the fit point spline, what I'm going to do, and you can put construction lines in if you want to, but I'm going to go and find the midpoint. And if you remember, we found the midpoint by moving on, and it changes to a triangle, and click. And then I'm going to draw a line up to that midpoint and click, then down to that midpoint and click, then to that midpoint, and so on across my boxes. And on the last one, I'm going to finish there and press it and press enter. So that's my basic shape. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off the construction lines a moment, again for clarity really. So there's our shape. The next thing now is to do an offset. So I highlight it and I give it an offset. I'll leave it at 1mm for the purposes of this exercise. And enter. And now the next stage is to close the ends. Straight line, close that end and close that end. Close the other end. And finish the sketch. Next thing is to extrude. Oops. E for extrude. And go on a bit of an angle so we do, and extrude it to whatever length you want. And there's our basic corrugated sheet. Now, I might want it wider. So the answer there is going off the spline bit a bit, but just to show you how we can copy that now, is to highlight it all. And we're going to do a copy, which is there. and we're going to copy the body, which is there, and we're going to select the origin point, and the origin point we're going to have there, and the target point is going to be this end, and create copy. And you can see how you can go on like this for whatever width you want. Really, you don't need to even do the length of profile. As long as you've got one complete profile, which would be to there, then you can copy it in the same way. You could do it with a pattern, but the trouble I found with a pattern is that you've got to manually line it up, sort of thing. Whereas when you do the copy command, you can go point to point, which I think Malcolm and I, one of us, would have covered in the copy one. And that's basically the spline. So if I just pop back to sketches, if you want something totally different, you've got pull handles. So if you want to go on a handle, and you can, you know, start pulling it and change the shape to your heart's content, really. I think if you're doing a spline profile, to construct it within a rectangle or square or something of that nature is probably easier than trying to draw it roughly. But, you know, you can do it that way as well. So if I just back up to our basic model there, and then you can click on it, and as I say, you can adjust it with the pull handles. So that one will, if we can get at it, well, you can see how that adjusts the curve, and then you've got other handles here. Now the only thing I find with this, I've used this sort of technique on splines in other graphics packages, and as you probably realize, using these pull handles, I find it rather difficult when you're doing freehand stuff. If you're trying to fit it to a template or a tracing, okay. But I find the spline is much better to draw in the way I've shown you here. The sketch mode again. We're going to come down now and look at this central point spline. The easiest one is to show you rather than explain it. And like Malcolm, I suppose I'm not going to go into the maths because there's probably maths behind it that you can use for calculation, but that's too complicated. So with this one, we can put a point down, and then we go to the next point, and then we go to a third point, and we can see the curve coming. And we click that one. Now the curve doesn't start from that point. You see how the curve changes now? So it's not a point-to-point curve like I did the first time. This is a curve which is the sort of, I suppose, the mean. It follows the mean path of the dots that you, or the points that you put down. You can get all weird and wonderful shapes with this. I suppose it's the sort of thing that could be used for maybe, you know, producing the sort of shapes that you get on screwdriver handles, the old-fashioned screwdriver handles, something of that nature. But whereas the previous one I showed you, the curve went through the points that we put down, this one doesn't. It follows the mean average. And like all the other ones, again, you can dimension. So we can click on the dimension tool, which I always keep on my toolbar here. Click on that, and if we say we want to dimension that to there, up comes a dimension, and we can type a dimension in there. I'll change that from 21 to 30, and it changes the curve. In the same way, I could, if I wanted to, put another dimension in and say from there to there. And it's, you know, as you know with dimensions, if you can either do that one or the other one. So if we were to go on that one, for example, and we change that to 60, then it moves away, and it will move away from the second one that's chosen. You can put a dimension across the entire lot, of course, by going from that one to that one, and we'll call that 200. So you can dimension it in the same way. You can't pull parts of the curve down by clicking on the curve, because that just moves the whole thing. But you can click on the point and alter the curve in that way. As you see, the 30 dimension will stay because we fixed that one, and you can waggle the others about to your heart's content. And you can see the curve forms a curve. I forget, there is a name for it in mathematics, a sort of and it's also used, it's the sort of curve that you use in, I believe, in finance, where you're looking at mean averages of a set of figures. It's that sort of situation, that the curve follows the mean between all the points, okay? And it can be dimensioned and moved about in that way. That basically covers that curve.